Please visit anywhenanywhere.com for more information about this program.
WTBC Radio, in beautiful, anywhere, and anywhere.
It's our conversation with the Colourflies.
Wanting to be cool.
And an old conversation from the past. It's 2 for the price of 1 this week. As we have a chat with both Matthew and Dave.
Wanting to be cool.
Imagine suddenly if you got to take something that you loved doing when you were in high school and extend that over the next 10 plus years in a way that was creatively and financially viable for you and your partners. You might be able to get a couple of albums out of this deal and possibly go on some tours with some friends of yours that you quite enjoy, and maybe even get to meet some heroes of yours, or even have an album produced by someone that that's like a personal musical legend that you're so excited to talk to every single day that you're in the studio. Take all of that and add a slice of small townness to the existences of the members of the Colourflies, and you're kind of getting a little close to what their lives are like. This is one of those bands that they've been at it for so long that I've actually interviewed them now 3 times, and it is a shame that this is the first time it is actually winding up on any of my radio programs. Now, that is probably a story that in and of itself requires a full podcast to explain, but let's just say that a couple of computer malfunctions and massive data losses combined with 2 break-ins where I was, let's just say, relieved of my computing devices led to, almost all of these interviews with Matthew getting lost, which is a real shame because the Colourflies are this weird slice of musical joy that is not really like a lot of things that you're going to see or hear in the current age. Now, there is something to be said for the label that's often added to them where they have a little bit of a throwback or retro sound. And that might be because they seem to name-check a lot of stuff from the 90s. But don't let that fool you, because the production quality, the sounds on these recordings, and the just overall attitude and sense of humor of the band puts them squarely in the modern age. If perhaps you can smell the Posies riffs all over their stuff. But, there's more than just that. We talk about it quite a bit in the interview, but the Colourflies are one of these bands where they are soaking in the musical melange of, all of recorded musical history. And because of that, they have access to all this stuff and can use it as ways of painting all sorts of new kinds of music in their own style and in their own words, using these references that might sound like a Flaming Lips tune, for example. Maybe my talking about it without a little more context is kind of fruitless, so why don't we just get into things right now. This is WTBC Radio in beautiful Anywhen, Anywhere, and this is my conversation with members of the Colourflies, and I really hope that you stick around and kind of soak into this a little bit. We talk about personal challenges. We talk about successes. We talk about making records and what it's like to work with people that you idolize. But we also talk about being human. I think what's fun about conversations with Matthew is that he's always excited, he's always thrilled, he's always into talking about music itself and what music is doing to him to inspire his new music that he's working on. And if that isn't the best kind of document of an artist that you can find, then I really don't know what else would be.
TBC Radio in beautiful anywhere, anywhere.
This conversation occurred on April 30th, 2020, and on February 6th, 2019. I guess a good place to start would be... So we've had a couple conversations, Matt and I, over, I guess, the last couple of years. And, man, time flies. Because it feels like I talk to you and then like I'm like, oh, hey, I should talk to Matt again. And it's like, has it been a year? Like, whoa.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I guess probably the most relevant place to begin would be like, what has been going on in like the last year of not just your life, Matt, but of Colourflies. Like, I mean, I know, I think last time we spoke you were recording, but something wasn't out yet. It was still in progress.
Well, that is still seems to be the case. We're still working on
We've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, it's true. We're working on the record still and hope to finish in summer. But, I mean, we're all isolated. Luckily, Devin and I live together, so we can pretty much work on material.
Yeah, that's nice.
At home.
Whenever we want to. But, I mean, Maddie's all the way in a different state. I haven't seen her in a month or two,
right.
probably.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the challenging part, especially right now for artists, is that like, you know, even if you're used to working apart or remotely or something like that, there's still those like, you know, once a month or whenever where you get together and you jam things out and you're like, hey guys, like, what about this one? And now it's like all of that is like on a screen somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty bizarre.
That's not the same without the bass.
It really isn't. And another thing is so our plan was to travel to Virginia and work with our engineer friend Matt Francis and finish the record. So we flew there and did a bunch of material. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way we wanted it to as far as finishing and mastering the record and stuff like that. But we got a lot of material finished.
Nice. Yeah. That must feel good too, because like even if the record isn't out yet, like knowing that like you've got stuff in the can, stuff to work with, like that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it. I'm sure you could elaborate on it a little bit more too.
Sure.
It's kind of a good feeling, but it's almost more of a sense of like anxiety for me. All the material finished and not, it's just sitting there. I've listened to it hundreds and hundreds of times, you know. So you kind of start to hate what you've created, you know, what you've recorded, and then you fall in love with it again, you know, when you go back and listen to it. So I think I don't like being so stuck in a situation where those things represented the past more than they do the present.
Yeah.
And sometimes with stuff like that, it feels that way.
Yeah.
I think we've been playing, like when we jam, sometimes we've just been actually just jamming rather than just rehearsing, just making new stuff. And that's kind of been helping, I think, with that weird stagnancy.
Yeah, with that, I would agree with that. Definitely.
Yeah. No, I certainly connect with what you're saying, because like one of the challenges of the creative process is how long it takes to do something, you know?
Yeah.
Like even if you have like a song that you want to release as just a single digital download, to get from like idea in head to here it is online for kids to listen to, like there's a lot of steps in between. and so like certainly by the time something comes out, quote unquote, for people to hear, like the artist it's not new to the artist anymore. It's like super old.
Yeah, I think the way we deal with that is we just find ways to make it fun. Like we find ways to modulate the songs, make them live, you know, and we don't really feel stuck in any particular pocket of what we've done.
Nice.
I've never been that way.
That's cool.
Aside from right now, just in the way of not being able to go record what we need to record.
And the thing about these songs too, that are, one, they're more difficult than anything we've ever done, but also they're structured in a way, they have pop arrangements. Like these songs are in particular are really like on the record that way for that reason. And then we're trying to, when we go out, we'll expand on material like we always do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I always thought was kind of fun about like being in a rock band, especially with other guys where you've played for a while, is that you can kind of tweak the song a little bit where you're like, hey, like let's do a reggae intro on this tonight, guys, or
Yeah.
something like that. And then the song has like suddenly new weird life to it because you're like
Yeah.
forcing it through this weird filter.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, let's play the shoegaze version, or let's play the nicer or the cleaner
That's
version.
what the Grateful Dead did.
Yeah, the Grateful Dead, and
they always, whatever they were feeling, they would play the songs in totally different tempos and rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
Devin is a strong advocate for the Dead, so he's a Deadhead.
Well, yeah, I know that Matthew's taste is pretty wide ranging because when we've talked before, where we start talking about one kind of band, and then like by the end of it, we're down some weird '60s rabbit hole or something like that. But what's your range of music? What are you coming to when you are collaborating with Matthew?
It's pretty much widely similar stuff. Like we known each other since high school, and we started like he opened me up to a lot of music, and I like showed him some stuff, and Matt's always been much more like he listens to a lot more music than I do. Like I don't listen to a ton of music. I do listen to more music than the average person. Matt's just like constantly listening. I listen to all sorts of music though.
Yeah, we like different music, Devin and I do. But I mean, there's nothing that Devin likes that I also don't like.
Got it.
I mean, there's pretty much
goes the same both ways. Yeah.
I can't think of anything that I like that Devin doesn't like either. So
yeah,
but we seem to find the same appreciation in things, which is fairly rare for people.
Yeah,
not only friends but also in a band.
Yeah. Well, even people that are like all fans of the same album, like once you start talking about it, you realize, well, looks like that guy actually likes the bass playing more than anything else, or people key in on different parts of the album.
We definitely do.
But Devin is just as much of a production hound as I am.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
And as far as what we create and sonic, just sonic ambition, I suppose I would say.
Yeah.
Like he's as into his drum equipment as I am my gear.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my amp and my preamps and stuff like that. So
yeah.
It's really like good because we push each other all the time that way.
Yeah, it's always been our relationship since I joined the band.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have that kind of thing because like I think I mean maybe this is just my particular perspective, but I certainly get in a rut where if I'm by myself just kind of like writing songs alone or whatever, like I'm only bouncing things off of my own interests. And so like the songs kind of all start to sound a little just the same. And once you have another voice in there, it really starts to kind of ping pong back and things start to build. And I think that dialogue really helps a lot with songwriting.
Yeah. And I think we all tend to be really critical of ourselves in the band, which also lends itself in a direction as well. I mean, there are things that I've played riffs or something like that we'll be playing, and we might be playing them for weeks or something like that. And I watch Mady and see, she's a pretty good indicator of what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. Because if she's not doing it, typically that's when we drop the song.
Right.
Yeah. Her musical sensibility is really good.
Right. She just knows. I mean, she has probably a better not musical, I wouldn't say musical sense, but a musical outlier, like ideology about music than Devin and I think probably have.
Some kind of sense.
Yeah, just, I don't know.
Sure. Well, and I think that especially as like a maturing songwriter, this is certainly the case when I was younger, is that like, you think music is going to turn out one way when you sit down to write it with, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to be this kind of band, we'll write rock music. Yeah, this is great. But I think when you start getting those other voices in there, you start to realize that the melange is really where it's at. It's like when these things start to mix, that's when it's really.
What's also interesting about our band too, whatever we've done, ever since I've been a songwriter, is we've written all different types of music. Ever since the band started, 12 years ago, we were 18, 17 years old. We would have a song that was like a jazz song, or we would have a song that was like a, heavy song, or we would have, middle of the road stuff. And always different genre. things. We were always pulling from different bands for each song.
Right.
Yeah, I think we might have back in the day been a little bit more locked into the idea too of like we're trying to have this particular rock sound. Like it's got to be like the rock.
Definitely.
And then we've definitely, but we still had like softer stuff back then.
Yeah, we had on the first album we had a song. Nobody's heard the first album before except for our small core.
Yeah, we there was 100 printed. I think.
In Coast Falls or whatever in Idaho. But there's a song on there that sounds like Fleetwood Mac, So I mean, we were trying to pull from everything.
Yeah, but now I feel like our writing style is a little more complex, where we are able to combine different influences more creatively, rather than just having like here's like the rock song and here's the soft song.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Here's the punk song.
We've combined all those things to put into one. Yeah. And we really had to focus. We had a little pre-production stuff before we went into the studio and recorded with Ken. So we really had to focus on it. This album specifically was more like how concisely can we get these parts to where it's just we've never had that kind of production before. So we want everything to be, and for this goes for this many bars. This goes, you know what I mean?
Well, like stuff like we had to record 6 songs in 2 days, and that's like all the vocals and
so we had to be ready. And then we had probably, like about half a week longer to do the other stuff too, because we did multiple sessions with Ken.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and for people, we talked about this at length in our previous conversation, but for people who maybe are like Ken, this is Ken Stringfellow of Posies, correct?
REM, Posies, Big Star.
Yeah, he gets around.
All great power pop bands.
Yeah. Producer
is incredible. Incredible. Did singing on the record. You played piano.
Mm-hmm.
First single.
Oh man, yeah, his piano track.
So that's something to think about too. Is the Colourflies next? The first big single from our, first major label distro album or whatever has piano on it.
Yeah, how cool is that?
That's unprecedented.
And I'm spacing the name.
Mellotron.
Oh, Mellotron.
We got Mellotron on a lot of stuff too.
Very cool. Yeah, that's an instrument that it has a very interesting like era specific sound to it, where like
you listen to it and it just sounds like Strawberry Fields.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like it had to have been recorded before 1980.
Right, or any kind of Moog synth you listen to that. It sounds like the Abbey Road or the White Album.
Right.
But it's worth it. I mean, those are the kind of things we want to reach for. We'd rather reach for those things than I don't know what else.
Yeah. And I may have mentioned this before too, but like this totally makes sense in terms of the pairing, because when you listen to the Colourflies output, I mean, you guys do range quite wildly within even songs itself between genres, but there is a strong power pop edge that runs through a lot of this material.
I questioned it a lot, like especially this year when we were working with Ken and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, I just tend to be that kind of person or that kind of writer. Mm-hmm. I think that what it is if it doesn't interest me, then I don't go ahead with it. And so we're all pretty brutally honest in the band, but there's melodies that as soon as you start singing them, that's a song you're going to put on the album.
Nice.
Even if you don't have the rest of the arrangement down, you have that and you'll know. Mm-hmm. And to speak of that pop sensibility too, like Matey came up with the bass line for a song on the record called Horseradish. And I just had this one A riff chord thing, and I was singing over that, and I was like, oh, I already know this could be something.
Now, this is maybe an interesting thing to dial in on, because I talk to a lot of musicians about songwriting and whatnot, but like you're talking about where you'll hear a specific melody or progression, and you're like, that's going in the record. We don't know where yet, but we're going to keep that. Like, how do you file that?
What's funny, sometimes we don't even have vocals, but the riff moves you in such a way that you're like, oh, that's good. That's definitely like something that's worth pursuing for months.
Yeah. How do you track that? Do you say you have that like as a separate file, or like you write things down, or what's the process?
Hundreds of little sound clips.
I like this. I mean,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Sometimes the nitty gritty sounds kind of wild.
Dev and I actually talk about it all the time. We have, this is funny enough, but we made 4 separate Drive accounts on emails between us and other people that we use. Between those, there's probably more than 1,000 or so ideas. Just little.
Always crazy.
Between the three of us, maybe you and me, you know, and
yeah,
it's crazy. There's probably about
that's definitely the bulk of them.
probably about 200 rehearsal tapes. Just
off of that, I mean, yeah,
we were, you know, it's so, yeah.
Got a lot of demos, B-sides.
So you know the ones that stick around, you know those are good ones. You can tell. You can feel there.
Especially if you're producing that much stuff too, because like after a while, I mean, you guys said it yourself. If something starts to get boring, or if it's not sparking your interest anymore, it probably drops out of the set pretty quick.
Well, I think it's funny. The Beatles always talked about, you know, if you can remember it in the morning, it's worth keeping.
Yeah.
We don't follow that same thing. We just record absolutely everything because.
That's true. Well, they couldn't record stuff all willy-nilly.
No, they couldn't. But the point being, they wouldn't even put down a demo. They could remember if they could remember. You know, but
it has to be catchy.
Right, but I mean, it's Beatles music.
Yeah,
we're not writing Beatles. I mean, I wish.
We do have some catchy things. We also have songs that are. I mean, I think only like 3 or 4 of the songs on this album I get in my head regularly.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, it is kind of hard if you hold yourself to that standard of it needs to be as catchy as a Beatles song. That's a pretty high standard to meet.
There are 4-part harmonies on some of this stuff that are very Beatles-esque. Like
cool.
Ken and I arranged a 4-part like harmony section for the chorus.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's what we're reaching for, but you always fall short when it comes to Beatles. We find.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like I think that there's this. I was talking to John Truby about this once, where he said the problem with the Beatles is that they kind of take the oxygen out of the room, because any other music compared to them, you're comparing it to like this giant monolithic, hugely respected thing. And so it's like you kind of have to like almost compare them to a separate thing. You know, it's like you got to take them out of the room and go like, well, we know about the Beatles. Well, let's talk about other stuff now.
Yeah, especially like, and it's kind of sad too, because even the demos are. We were listening to the recently like released White Album outtakes.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. Like it's not fair that. That's me every day.
Yeah.
But the love I hold for them is just like, it's so high that it's
right.
I'm okay with it. But
you do have to kind of solve for that equation though, because it's like no matter what kind of songs you write, like sooner or later, if you veer anywhere in the pop rock realm, people are going to go like, oh, okay, so you have heard of the Beatles.
Yeah. Anybody that says,
any of the bands is heavily influenced.
Yeah, anybody that says, well, you know, the only reason people say I don't like the Beatles is to be
Right.
There's no possible other explanation. And Devin, that's Devin I's thing every time. Oh, you don't like any of modern music?
That's kind of what you're saying, basically. You're throwing that flag on the ground, going like, "Yep, that's what I mean."
It's just like, that's stupid.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And certainly, like, we all have our particular tastes and whatnot. And this is something that I kind of actually was curious about too. Is that like, we learn from music in so many different ways, and you know, like sometimes the source material doesn't do it for you the first time, and then you hear someone else's version, and then somebody interprets it for you in a way where you get it, and you're like, oh, and then you kind of look back and you suddenly things click. And like one of the things I appreciate about Colourflies is that like I feel like there's so much stuff that people could trace back to other artists that like listening to your album is kind of like a little puzzle where you're like, oh, I hear this in here, and I hear that in here, and I hear this in here. And
I think we're so self-aware that we know when we're ripping something off. We know when these parts sound like something else, that it's almost like a game.
Right.
And
how can I make this different?
Right.
I mean, it is different, but make it even more different.
And sometimes it's in jokes, you know, like if we have a song that sounds like a certain song, we'll give it like almost the same name or something like that. It's like Mady and I have an agreement that we're always going to just be kids, and we're always just going to, because why not?
Anyone who's a fan
exactly,
of the
to anybody,
material, they'll get it.
That's specifically Beatty's like MO too.
Yeah,
and she like will call the song. I mean, we'll all like call it like, oh, is that Zeppelin song, or oh, that Pumpkin song.
Yeah.
Oh, that Sunny Day Real Estate riff.
Right. Yeah. I was in a band for a while where we had like the Heart song, or like, oh yeah, play that Heart riff, or what? It's like we all know what we're saying is that like we all love these bands.
Record called Elephant Song, and I wrote it probably when I was getting into Kate's the Elephant and Dinosaur Jr.
Right.
So I wrote it on tour, but yeah, I mean that's what it's called.
Yeah. Well, and certainly, a lot of people like try to hide this stuff because they're like, oh, I'm a insular artist that writes things from the heart only, and
that's over.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. I mean, like we were at one point, probably when we got signed, probably when we had a little bit of talk in our walk, and we were like, we at one point were probably more like less likely to talk about our influences as far as. Because, I mean, we used to get slated. I mean, there's a magazine article by Wall, which is like says that our song Pepper sounds like the Friends theme song. Don't anything that influences your music, because people in your city are going to read that trash.
Right. Yeah, and I don't hear that actually. That seems like a little bit of a stretch.
That was a planned assailment. We were assailed.
Mm-hmm.
The press. We have been before too, and so that's another thing with this album where we're very aware that there will be a press cycle. There will be questions asked, and so we're trying to prepare for that too.
But I mean, you guys are very comfortable with who you are too. It's not like, I mean, like certainly people will go kind of like, well, this is a whatever, like they'll have their opinions, but like you guys are very honest about like, yeah, this is what we do, this is what we like. Screw you. Like we're gonna keep playing these songs.
Why hide behind the pretense of I'm so edgy and so arty that I'm not influenced by anything? Because that's a fucking lie.
Well, sometimes live when we'll have like break sections in songs where the instruments kind of drop out, it's just like the rhythm, And Matt usually like has some vocal or something. Sometimes he'll just like sing a song that sounds like. Just sing a song.
I love that.
Rock and roll is meant to be poked fun at.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not
corny fun.
It is. It's you're already. I mean, think about the absurdity of it. People have like our first tour show or whatever. People had bought 100-something people bought $10 tickets to come see us play distorted like riffs and yell and jump around.
Right.
It's ridiculous. The absurdity of it is totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you take yourself out of that, of course you're going to poke fun at it.
Yeah.
I love serious bands. I love, people. I love Depeche Mode. I love, bands that are really, really serious about the craft
I like
Cure
heady music
and stuff. But, like you got to give it up for like Pavement and stuff like that. The poked fun. They managed to have semi-hit songs and alternative Creedence and poked fun at, everything they were doing.
Yeah. Sense of humor meant so much to those guys that they would rather be funny than they would be like a top seller.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do that.
I find it more in they'd rather be expressive. And whatever direction takes, that's what they follow that muse.
Sure.
Than hit records or anything like that.
Yeah. I always think of like whenever somebody sings so like eloquently about, oh man, like Pavement, they were so genius and whatnot, the thing that comes to mind is their appearance on Space Ghost, which
it's great.
It's so silly and wonderful and joyous.
Yeah, I have that season on DVD, not to put myself in a 90s TV.
It's time for Dial a Song. Hey, what the hi? It's John F. of They Might Be Giants, and you're listening to Austin Rich on WTBC Radio in beautiful Anywhere, Anywhen. It's a podcast with Austin, and this is They Might Be Giants Song of the Week. This is the latest from us. It's our Dial a Song.
That's an old photo, but yes, it's her I'll tell you what I already told the cops. You better write this down, I don't want to repeat it. After we're done here, I prefer to forget the name of Jackie the Clipper. I used to know her well as someone ever could know her. Mind like a zipper, holding her on while she was holed up in that darkened apartment. Nobody's sicker, can't say I miss her. Not after what she did to anybody who's surrendered. Jackie the Clipper, no one has seen her since they fired her after all of the horror. If you got nothing nice to say, there's nothing left to say. Garden tide, can we end this soon? All these questions wear me down. You better press record, I don't want to repeat it. After we're done here, I will try to erase the name of Jackie the Clipper. I used to know her well as someone ever could know her. Mind like a zipper, holding her on while she was holed up in that darkened apartment. It would be charity to say that Jackie was careless. She wasn't careless. Jackie the killer, Jackie the overconfident and undercompetent butcher. Jackie the Clipper, no one has seen her since they fired her after all of the horror. If you got nothing nice to say, we already know which one you mean. And if you got nothing else to say, there's nothing left to say.
WTBC.
Colourflies, a demo recording actually made, I'm assuming, by the band themselves. So let's actually go back in time a little bit and hear the conversation from 2019 with just me and Matthew, where we get into a little bit of the personal experiences that they've been going through as a part of performing in this band and opening up to the world at large and finding out what's inside of their own hearts and minds.
Well, we talked about 2 years and a month-ish or so ago.
Yeah, a lot has happened.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and in that conversation, what was really funny, because I just listened back to it, we start talking about you being a fan of Ken Stringfellow and going to see him. And
play,
having him sign a guitar and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then, since then you've played with him.
Yeah, we've opened for him. He's played my guitar in studio, and it's a really happy time for our band, and especially for Mady and I, because in high school we worshipped Frosting on the Beater and Amazing Disgrace.
Yeah.
2 seminal Posies records on DGC, and we couldn't believe a band like that existed.
Well, and contextually too, nothing else like that was around at the time. Like
absolutely,
it wasn't like
our manager, our current manager now, is like, I used to walk down the street in Seattle, and see the Posies walking around with their goth outfits and big hair, and everybody disliked them because they weren't grunge, and
right. Yeah,
it's so weird.
This is if you were not kind of mining that Pearl Jam-y kind of vibe at the time, like, you weren't cool.
Yeah, and they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't even get into the clubs because they were young. They weren't even 21 or whatever, and the record Failure came out, and it was like a huge, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was a big indie hit. So they were like...
Well, and there was something kind of like prescient about it too, because they were doing these like jangly Beatles-ish kinds of things, and there was like this kind of more pristine kind of vibe to the sound, and people weren't ready for that yet. Like it took...
No, absolutely not. They were coming from XTC land,
yes.
And people were like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, so that's...
It's funny how often that band seems to come up lately, because certainly at the time when the Posies were around, you hardly heard anyone talk about XTC. Like they weren't.
I honestly, and I feel like in citing new wave bands as idols or influences wasn't cool.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So like I've cited Oingo Boingo, and I love Oingo Boingo, and that's like uncool as an alternative fan.
Yeah, it's funny that like they used to be, and then they went away, and then in certain circles they still kind of are, but yeah, they aren't cool like they were in the 80s.
Yeah, it's weird because and I love XTC too, and it's strange that there's this some sort of kind of asterisk on what is cool and what isn't cool. Right. Influence wise, like it's cool to. Now it's definitely cool to say Led Zeppelin is a big influence, but like I'm sure in the past it wasn't,
Yeah. Well, like it took, at least in my memory, it took until Nirvana and grunge breaking again before people were like, oh yeah, I always liked Led Zeppelin. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah, and we never really claimed punk rock influences. I mean, like the Ramones and Husker Du and stuff like that. We like that, but. But Mady's more the punk rock person, but I never claimed that stuff really.
And you always, I mean, we talked about this last time. You kind of lean towards like heavy melodic kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm more on the side of Queen and Thin Lizzy, and yes. Even to some extent Mudhoney and Melvins. I mean, that's where some of the heavy stuff comes from. But I mean, like, yeah, I'm more on the melodic heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but even Megadeth were melodic,
Sure. So. Well, and it kind of shows too, because since we talked last, there's a couple of albums that have come out that are kind of like, a representative of a different sound than what you had kind of before.
Yeah.
You have this, the most recently Flavor of the Year,
Flavor of the Year, yeah. That was actually supposed to be an EP. It's just 13. It's kind of like a weird leftover EP of stuff that people had never heard before. So we're
an EP plus.
Yeah, so our label was just like, I was like, well, we could put this out. And they're like, this is 13 songs. This is like a record. And I'm like, okay, well, you can call it whatever you want. I just, I think
this is what it is.
This is what it is, and here it is,
And this is only a few months old too, because like about a year prior, you had the Been There, Seen It, Lived It, Licensed It.
Yeah, and that was like a 3-year period, and that was kind of our foray into the national scene of music on a label, on like a label. There's there's BL, before label, and AL after label.
Right.
Because
and humorously enough, Black House too, which is like a BL.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because like you guys were kind of at the beginning of doing label stuff and recording things and whatnot, and it was starting to break kind of big the last time we chatted.
It was, yeah, and now that Black House has gotten they've got national artists on the roster now that are rappers and hip hop artists. We opened for Slug Christ, which Slug Christ. If you can imagine that show.
Wow.
We opened in our city for Slug Christ, and it was the weirdest bill ever, but I mean, the room was packed and people were receptive. And
oh, that's cool. That's cool, because sometimes you get the other story where
not receptive. People weren't receptive, and
right.
They hate us and threw tomatoes. But no, yeah. So things have started to break big. I mean, with this record and. Specifically working with Ken, and also just the melodic tier we're on right now or whatever.
Yeah,
we're poised to actually chart on the Billboard charts with this album.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
I mean that's life made for me. I mean, I'd never thought I'd be doing this, 10 years or whatever, and here we are, and now we're possibly about to chart and. Maybe get on the radio, or that's kind of a weird thing to think about. One of the biggest Seattle radio people that has ever been involved with any kind of medium like that is Marco Collins, and he's a fan of ours now.
Wow.
He saw us open for the Posies, and he was like, as soon as you hit that fuzz box, it was like Dinosaur Jr. Revisited, in front of me again, and I was like, it's such an honor, because he was there. He interviewed the Smashing Pumpkins. He's read, a letter at Kurt Cobain's funeral. It's just it's a weird alternative world to be living in, and things are the same for me, basically.
Right. Well, and to put this in a little bit of context too, so you guys had your Been There, Seen It, Lived It, Licensed It album. You started doing these kind of gigs with the Posies, getting a little more recognition, and then Flavor of the Year comes out.
No.
Oh,
I think.
Did I get it the other way around?
I think Flavor of the Year came out before that.
Oh,
but you might be right.
Okay.
It's a weird time. I came back, so I was in Florida with my family, and I was at Disney World for a week.
Oh, fun.
And so basically. I was there, and I was enjoying Disney World after a really traumatic event in my life, real bad thing. I don't know if you ever saw any of that stuff, but just a public, it was a real bad time anyway.
Are you not comfortable talking about it, or?
No, we can talk about it. It's
sure.
Fine. I had a suicide attempt, and
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I understand where I was coming from, and I have a lot of love for the person that I was then,
right?
And compassion for where I was coming from at the time. Didn't really understand the bearings of what I was doing or my surroundings or the gravity of the whole situation. And it was kind of crazy, people booking flights to go find me in a city they'd never been in. And it was
whoa.
Somebody posted a missing persons thing on my, Facebook, and
wow.
I never came out and said anything, but people put pieces together from the last week, and it was a really bad time.
Got it.
So,
okay.
That aside, I went to visit my family afterward because they wanted to see me, and
sure.
We went to Disney World with my brothers and sisters, and so I was there for a week in a condo in Orlando,
mm-hmm.
and my friend from a band called The Shop, which I play drums in, was like, "Hey, you want to come play on tour with us in California? We have a school bus. We're opening up for a band called Free the Jester." So I changed my ticket and went home, and basically was home at night. And then the next morning, got in this bus, and off we went to San Francisco, and played 4 shows. And after that, I stayed in San Francisco for a day, and then I stayed with my grandmother in Sacramento for a week. But during that week is when I recorded some of Flavor of the Year.
Got it.
Yeah, I came back, and basically I was on the road putting the thing together, and came home, and I was like, okay, well, we have an EP. I recorded 2, acoustic songs at a California studio, and then we put that out. So I believe, that was prior to us opening up for the Posies and playing these big, spectacular gigs. We also opened up for Green Jello and played sold-out shows for a tour as well.
Wow.
So, okay.
And that's kind of interesting, too, because
we were his backing band.
Whoa.
We played,
I was gonna ask.
Yep, we played. Yeah, we were his backing band. We learned all the songs, and our label owner actually played the drums on the Green Jello sets with us. So Mady and I and Scott, our label owner, we learned we learned all the songs off the records basically, and we rented a van and we went to Montana for 4 days, and it was amazing. Played in front of the biggest audiences we ever played, in front of like 600, 700 people, and
that's so
film the whole thing. And
the funny part too is that, like, as I understand it, the primary gentleman behind Green Jello is moving to Europe, and so
he is moving to Europe. We're playing some. I'm going to be playing guitar on some of his last dates here in the States.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, so if you want to see this, anybody who's listening, and hurry up.
Yeah, absolutely, because the time is now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the plan is next year when the record comes out. And it's Dysphagia is what the record's going to be called.
The new one.
The new one, yeah. It'll we'll go to Europe and tour because we've gotten offers. So
cool. Yeah, you don't want to turn that down if you can make it work.
I would love to. I mean, there's nothing I would rather do. I love English bands. My Bloody Valentine's a huge influence of mine. Although I think they're Scottish, but they moved to the UK.
Right.
Depeche Mode's amazing, and there's all sorts of English bands that we love.
Right. Well, and this is something that, so when we talked last time, one of the threads in that conversation were some of the beginning opportunities that working with labels and playing in a bigger arena kind of offer you. And so now, it's a few years later, and already being able to work with Ken Stringfellow is kind of
success realized. I mean, geez, it's weird. This is, but it's
but that's not just the beginning too, because the opportunity to even consider Europe is also kind of because of that. Are there other little things that you've noticed in the last couple of years that before
opportunity wise? Yeah, like from everything from getting strange phone calls at 3 a.m. to, 27 messages when you wake up in the morning from people that are around the world who are interested in what you're doing, and it's weird, Yeah. It's kind of a strange existence before. Here's a good example. Like, I posted a cover of Into Your Arms by it's the Lemonheads did a cover of it. But
right, okay.
Right, yeah, big hit for the Lemonheads. But so the girl that wrote that song is Robin St. Clair, and she was in a band called the Love Physicians, and also a band called the Hummingbirds.
Okay.
And so I posted that cover. It was just me playing my new acoustic guitar. I got a 70s ovation for the record for recording, and so I posted that cover, and Nick Dalton, who was the bass player of the Lemonheads when they were touring for that cover and for that record or whatever, tags Robin St. Clair in it. And Robin St. Clair is it's amazing. This is a great job. This is amazing. And I got to ask her questions about the song, why is it so short on the original album? And, and I likened it to a early Beatles piece because it kind of sounds like it. It's almost like something off Help or something.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. So, or like Rubber Soul, but so that's kind of like where I'm coming from. Or Susan Dando, Evan's mom, is a big fan of our band, and
oh, cool.
And so she talks. She sent me a Lemonhead's old T-shirt, and I send her every release we have. I send her something and through the mail, and she's
This is another one of those groups that often kind of gets forgotten in the story of 90s rock
grunge
music because they were a little too poppy, and they were
that's true. There was nothing
covers and stuff,
but there was also nothing like the Lemonheads. Like think about it. I mean, like country, even bring country into the semi-mainstream.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like old country. Like talk about Graham Parsons and Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah.
And
there's a flavor on that "It's a Shame About Ray" album where they are like listening to kind of like light FM 70s country rock.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. And I mean, it was one of those things that like, again, at the same time, Nirvana and Soundgarden are putting out records. The Melvins are kind of getting a buzz. Everything's really heavy. And then
it's
the Lemonheads.
That's exactly it. It's like I like that dichotomy. I like the idea that a band like that could be successful in the throes of everything else, because that gives me hope that in this top 40 driven EDM auto-tune world we could somehow make a little blip of an impact. Even getting on the charts would be enough for me, because it's like that proves that what we were doing is worth the public's time. And I honestly believe a good pop song can transcend medium.
Yeah, that's true. That you have an emotional connection to these things that, it's not just the CD or the, whatever. It's the experience of how you get to listen to it and who you get to listen to it with and things like that. Right.
When I first heard Foster the People, that blew my mind that an alternative band that's coming from Beach Boys land, which is where I'm coming from. I mean, like, Pet Sounds one of my favorites. But you know what I mean? Like, it's coming from that land, that world.
Sure.
Managed to, I can't believe that managed to even get on the charts or get on the radio. And it was not just one single. Like, Foster the People dominated that year and a half or 2 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
You heard Pumped Up Kicks and you're like, that's a really damn good song. And then you heard we used to cover Don't Stop back in the band. Beatty and Devin hate it now, obviously. But I mean, we used to cover one of the singles from that record because it was like huge, and we couldn't believe that like a band that was coming from Beach Boys land and Blur land, like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, could even make any kind of impact at all, and they did.
Yeah. I guess you guys do have kind of like a parallel interest or aesthetic with Blur, and that you like to try a lot of different things, but you still definitely have a flavor that's uniquely Colourflies.
We were talking about that recently. That this part is this band, but this is all Colourflies. We were talking about that the other day when we were in the studio. But there is a thing, whatever it is, whatever our band, and we're proud of it because it's so hard to be original at all, and if by, copying other bands that we love or whatever gets us to a point where we don't recognize what we're doing, that is like a version of our originality,
Sure. I want to zero in on that a little bit because, I mean, you say copying, but, when I listen to your guys' stuff, I joke and kid where I'm like, here's the Tripping Daisy part. Or
Yeah. No, we do the same thing, where the, here's the,
But I mean, you
the Thin Lizzy part or something,
Sure, but I mean, like, even though I can kind of say like, I hear, Black Francis in that guitar part, I can't point to a Pixies song and say, see, they ripped off this riff, It's not like that.
It's not. I mean, it's not usually like a specific. We don't like we've never necessarily gone for a specific song and then ripped the whole song off.
Right.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, oh, this is vaguely in the style, or this is kind of like that thing, or whatever, but it's like, somehow within that we find our own way,
Right. Well, and that definitely feels, at least from my perspective, like something where you can tell the difference between like a band that just wants to copy like, Black Sabbath, and so all they do is like...
Oh, we have plenty of those bands around here, and we love Black Sabbath too. So it's not like a put down for Black Sabbath. It's just that, you go see a band that's stoner metal or Black Sabbath, and that's all they are, and that's all they do, and it's like, we'd rather have a Black Sabbath part,
For sure, yeah. Because within the context of Colourflies too, it's kind of in the name. It's like it's not just one color. It's not this monochromatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's other elements all kind of fluttering around, and
I'd like to be able to claim the foresight of that, 10 years ago, but I had none. I was a high school student, and I was like, we need a name, and that's as good a name. People never forget the name. Sure.
Well, it's very evocative too, which I think
right.
Listening to your tunes kind of has that same flavor to it. 'Cause, I may have said something similar in our last conversation, but I love that within a song you can hear this like beautiful guitar passage. Suddenly the pedal gets stomped. The fuzz kind of comes out.
Yeah,
it turns into this other kind of beast. Then it
that's
goes
kind
back.
of that's kind of our mission statement. Is beauty and malice within the same song. It's just like evocative of human emotion. Sometimes you feel, angry. Sometimes you feel beautiful, and sometimes you feel, in between, all in the same, 10-minute span.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it helps kind of like heal that part of you that feels fractured in that way,
Absolutely. I feel, and I've had people say this, that my band is, as close as they've come to some sort of therapeutics, experience, because I'm trying to exercise the same thing that everybody else is,
Yeah,
and that's ultimately what I'm saying, is that my human experience isn't necessarily unique, but the difference is I'm saying it, I'm telling you how it is.
Right.
Or expressing it, and some people don't,
Yeah, and in a very actual way too, because we talked earlier in this conversation, you essentially healed yourself by going on tour and writing songs,
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to, the worst thing is, so this is, and there should be a PSA about this, but the worst thing is getting back from a tour or some sort of jaunt of some kind and just sitting in your room and being like, what now? That is the most depression I've ever felt in my life, and it's hard to explain, and my bass player, Mady, and I were talking about it. It's like the incredible highs. You go from such incredible highs to such low.
Right.
You're freezing in your house. You're wearing a sweater. You know what I mean? Like, and you just had, you had 700 people or something like that screaming, and you can still hear that scream in your ear.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well, and how do you communicate that to somebody too? Because
you can't communicate that to somebody. You can only say, you could have people, project their reality on you, which is, it is so glamorous too, and it is so great to be you, and you should just be happy because of what you've done, and you are happy with what you've done, but you're also not satisfied, and that unsatisfaction paired with the low of coming back from it is like, you start to see where musicians, like, they're chasing something. It's like a drug. They're chasing something every time.
Yeah.
And if they don't get to that expectation, or they don't get to the, if they don't get high again, they're not going to be able to move on. They can't go.
Yeah. Well, and you're definitely not the first person to express this, but there is a kind of like yearning in Flavor of the Year where you guys are kind of trying to say something that isn't just kind of a teenage emotion.
Yeah, that was me becoming. I'm still dealing with maturity issues, but that EP, that collection of songs, like a mixtape more than anything, is like me reaching for something while becoming an adult. Because some of those songs I recorded when I was 24, 23, and I was reaching for something that I couldn't really, I could try to say as much as I want to, in that context, but I could never really get there. And
you needed the experience first.
I just needed the experience first. Exactly. Like I was talking about things that some of it I hadn't even experienced. Like I felt like I would go on to experience that, and I would write from that perspective. Mm-hmm. Some of it was incredibly personal, and I did experience it,
Right.
Yeah, like there is a yearning because that was before. Some of that's before we got a record contract, before any newspaper or magazine ever looked at us. We got any adulation at all, and it was just trying to create what I was trying to create, but still trying to communicate where I was coming from. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really imprinted on that. I mean, and I think the last song on that record is a Hank Williams Sr. or Jr. cover, and it's I'm so lonesome I could cry. Mm-hmm. And that encapsulates a lot of that feeling for me.
Yeah.
Like the idea that I was trying to do the best that I could, and things were happening for the band even around that time or whatever. I mean, because some of that record was also obviously recorded later, that song being one of those tracks in the studio, just a warm-up track that the engineer hit record to hear the room, and I just played it, and like that's kind of where I'm coming from with that, is like I was trying to, I'm trying to yearn to do bigger things, but still dealing with life.
Yeah.
And it's hard,
It is. It's funny too, because like there needs to be. I have heard this from other people who, they go out on tour for some amount of time and then they come back, and it's almost like a huge trip, or like going to war or something like that, because like you can't explain to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I get what you're saying, and I don't want to obviously minimize going to war.
Sure. No, actually, that's probably a poor analogy.
I read, I've read Billy Corgan say that's the closest thing that he could approximate it to is
mm-hmm.
coming back from war, because people really like, and if you're going on tour we've never toured for months on end, but
right.
I've been gone for like 3 or 4 weeks or something, and.
A month is a long time, even if it only feels like you were out partying for a week.
There's something about life, like, and Devin and I, my drummer and I, talk about this all the time, where it seems that life is dull once you experience the highs of bleeding out your emotions. Marco Collins said that we he wanted to come to one of our shows in Seattle. We played this Raw Artist Festival recently, and he was he's like, bleed like you do, and really give the crowd what you can. And it's like there's the idea that doing that every performance,
yes, well,
it seems like it could go forever, but I honestly don't think it can.
Well, and like the other side of it too is that like you're sitting there thinking like, well, I can't just phone this in or
no, you
can,
and I don't have the ability to do that, and that's my thing, is I can't. Once I'm there, I'm in that headspace. I can't do it. I mean, the thing that distracts me is my equipment malfunction, and that happens a lot, and that drives me insane. But
it happens to the best of them at every level.
Exactly, yeah. But like that's as far as distraction goes for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool though, that because there is the other side of it where I meet people who they find some weird way to cope with it, and then suddenly their performances feel lacking.
Yeah.
And so.
And I never want that. I never want somebody to believe that I'm giving off, less than 100, or giving across less than 100% of the passion for what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
In any form, recording too, and we've been really distraught with recording sessions before too, because I mean it did not come out the way we wanted it to, you know. And some of that stuff nobody will ever hear because we're not going to offer a less than perfect representation of what we feel we are or what we should be represented by. So we have archives loaded with stuff, you know, that people have never heard and that's like Beatles covers and stuff like that. You know,
little gems that you could leak out as time goes on.
I would love to put it out. We have a cover of Glass Onion, White Album.
I could hear you guys do that song. That sounds,
it's rocking.
That definitely works. I mean, so one thing we talked about this last time in terms of kind of getting involved in, you know, bigger releases and whatnot. In terms of working specifically with Black House Records, you know, I'm always kind of curious because, you know, there's always the two phases of a band where there's the one, they do everything themselves and they're exhausted. And then two, they now have a label, but they're still doing everything themselves. And I'm just kind of wondering, like, what's the working relationship with Black House? Do you guys have that like self-negotiated? Is there someone who works it out for you, or
we so with Black House, I mean, we couldn't ask for a better label to start our career. Right. One, I mean, we don't have to deal with just distribution. We don't have to deal with I mean, PR. I mean, now we've hired a PR person. I mean, for the next record they have. Cool. So that'll be good. I mean, and that's the thing with Black House. They were absolutely shocked that we moved as many copies as we did, that we had our first write-up was in a UK magazine for the record. Cool. Like, people, like, they were like, I cannot believe you're selling hundreds of copies of this album. I cannot believe it. Like, they're like, people buy digital albums and vinyl. You're selling CDs with lyric books in it. Like, I don't know what you guys managed to tap into, but you did it somehow, you know? Nice. And I mean, I think we're all really proud that we were able to do that, you know, and now we're hoping to go even like way further, you know. Right. Yeah. And so our working relationship, going back to your question, is they handle distribution, you know, duplication, and they promote as necessary, and just really hands-on. We do interviews. We're going to do an interview on Sunday talking about what we've been doing, and just, you know, all the bands on that label we're friends with, and it's really cool, you know. It's a really awesome. We're also totally against our local newspapers and stuff like that, because they literally, you know, they've given us a cold shoulder thousands of times, you know. Interesting. And yeah, it's a big thing, you know. It's really stupid.
What do you think that's attributed to? Just because they have different taste or something? Or?
Honestly, I don't understand seeing a band doing something on a national level, an international level, and giving them absolutely no press. Yeah. Basically. I mean, they did one article, they did one snippet of an article with Black House and us. Huh. Like, I remember. And, but I mean, the rest of the article was just other bands that weren't signed. They were like, you know, signed versus unsigned bands, basically.
And you're the one that's the contrast. So.
Yeah, exactly. So of course they had to pick us. But, you know, like, we've had absolutely no press in this area, basically. Weird. Besides, we did a Coeur d'Alene Spokane magazine one time that was pretty good. But I mean, the article was slanted and it was ridiculous and awful, and wow. So I hated that. But bummer. It's on my wall.
Yeah, so someday you can replace it with a better.
Yeah, someday I can replace it with a better article, hopefully.
Right. Yeah.
But
it's definitely a challenge too, because and I think, you know, this happens to a lot of artists, but often it's because they're doing something weirder or louder or even stranger. But in your case, you're just doing something that's basically kind of out of step with what's cool.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like, no, we're not cool, and that's the thing. We'll never be cool. And if we ever do become cool, it's going to be like a freak thing, I think. Because,
a soul-searching moment.
Right, exactly. Because, like, what's cool is leather jacket wearing, like, PBR drinking blues rock or something. Like, I mean, that's cool. I'm never going to be that. Even though I love Hendrix and I love leather jackets, I'm just not going to, not going to go, we're not going to go there.
It's not the Matthew style.
No, yeah, we don't want to go there,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And we never would. So, and those are the bands that are in, you know?
Right.
And, you know, punk rock bands with cats in them, you know? Like, like, I mean, and I'm not slanting that towards the punk rock cats bands. I'm just saying that, like, I am slanting it towards the PBR drinking leather jacket bands because I can't stand them.
Yeah. Well, there's
no originality behind that idea, you know?
And there's still this kind of weird gatekeeping.
Like Black Keys.
Yeah.
Like, almost. Like, and I'm not saying, you know, if you like the Black Keys, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, like, that's all that is, and that's all that it continues to be. And in our scene, you're okay with playing to your club full of friends and then going home and go a new job, and that is not enough for me or the band, and it never will be.
Right. You guys you want to do more.
Yeah, exactly. We want to entertain on every level, and we want to further ourselves and challenge ourselves, and that's exactly it. People don't want to challenge themselves. People are fine being in their you know, just ring around the rosy carnival, you know, carousel lives where you get on once and then you get off and then you get on again, and it's literally just a circle.
Yeah. Wow.
And you just have people jacking you off the whole time saying, "Oh, you're so great," but it's like, is it really worth anything if you're not going to challenge yourself or go to a higher place?
Yeah, it's like kind of like repeating yourself over and over again just for the thrill of that.
Exactly, because we could record lo-fi records for the rest of our lives, you know, like Guided by Voices.
Sure.
and we love Guided by Voices. That's not the issue. The issue is there's more out there.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. You would pull that suitcase out and release it if it was that good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like we believe that we can achieve things higher than lo-fi records and playing to our friends and clubs. It's just, I mean, and it's obvious, and it's happened.
Yeah.
You know, we've already done that. You know, we played sold out shows and this year, and you know, like we've gotten paid and we've got a manager. And
see, this is the hallmark too, is that like, you know, as much as it's fun to like, oh, hey, we got to play this big show and all this other stuff, I love that there's still something about the bands that I know where they, at the end of the day, they say, hey, and we got paid this week.
I know, yeah. Can you imagine getting paid?
Oh, it's still a thrill for me too, because like I recall the 10 plus years of shows were with no money.
Yeah, I recall that too. 10 years of that. I mean, we've been a band. Yes, we've been a band for 10 years. Like, I remember not getting paid ever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you were just playing because you loved to play, and that was what you did. And
well, and then let's compare this to now, because like I'm sure that the working life of the Colourflies is very different when you're working on an album with someone like Ken. So
yeah,
how does
a lot more pressure.
How does this work? Like, do you guys bring in all your songs and say, "Hey Ken, which ones should we record?" Or
we had a basic conversation this last time about, okay, I showed him a song we have called Bomb Pop, which I premiered on this I did this. I was in New Orleans this last year, and I did an interview with Behind Second Lines magazine.
Oh.
And they came out, and I played acoustically and talked a little bit. And so one of the songs I did was called Bomb Pop, which was going to be on the new record either way, if Ken wasn't involved or not. And because it was a really good song. And I sent that one to Ken, and he's like, oh, I really dig this tune. We should do this one. And I was like, okay, so.
Cool. He has the same vision.
Yeah, so we know we want to do that one. And I knew we would want to do that one. It's melodic and soft and, you know. And then...
but that is a good barometer that, like, you like that one, you want to lead with that one, he likes it too. Okay, we're on the same page.
Absolutely, we're on the same page here. And I didn't have to send him 5 billion demos and him being like, no, I don't want to, I don't think it's very good. And he's like not only intimidating, he's just so honest, that he'd be like, I'm not really feeling that one for this.
Sure.
One time I called something that I was working on pop, and he was like, that's not pop. And I was like, it killed me inside. I was like, oh my God.
You're right. And oh no, it hurts.
You're right. And what am I doing? And I was like, and then I was like thinking about it. I was like, why would I call that pop to Ken? Like literally he's created like seminal pop tunes,
right,
like
He would know.
So he would know exactly. So
that's
anyway.
That's kind of funny though too, because like there is this moment, and we talked a little bit about this last time where you switch from, oh wow, I really like your music, to, oh, now we're working together.
Now we're peers in the situation, in the sense that you can you can say, I don't like this, and I can say, well, I don't like that, and
right,
we can meet in the middle. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and so it kind of becomes a different game too, because like before, when you're writing a song and you're like, okay, and here comes the posies part, now you can actually say like, hey Ken, is this too corny?
Here comes the posies part.
Yeah, is this?
Yeah,
should
exactly.
I redo this or what?
Yeah, there's plenty of posies-esque harmonies on the record because of that. But I mean, so that was that bomb pop song that we were like, yes, let's do that one. And then there was a song that I had written when I first swam in the Gulf. In the Gulf of Florida.
Oh wow.
So like the ocean, and I was terrified of swimming in any kind of large body of water because I almost drowned when I was a kid, and it was warm and receiving, and just a wonderful memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home, and my bass player at the time, Quest, was there the next morning, and I wrote the song called "Shake Me," and I wrote it in, literally 5 minutes, and it was done. And it was sitting around for, years, like a year or something like that, or 2 years maybe. And we played it at a show, Quest's last show in the band. And, once Matey came back to the band, we didn't have a lack of material. Let's just say that. So we had a lot of material to go through, and so I don't know, but like I guess we were just on these trips a lot, and we were just on tour and stuff, and I was thinking about the songs for the record, and I was just like, what about that "Shake Me" song? I mean, I think it's pretty good, and I think it was simple enough, and it was memorable enough to just be one of those songs that would be a single, And then it was finished, so we rehearsed it. I just kind of was like, I kind of want to do this "Shake Me" song with Ken, and have it be the lead single, or a double A side with the lead single, from the record.
Sure.
And Devin's like, yeah, I like the song. So we started rehearsing it, and then brought Matey in, and it just literally clicked instantly. Like it was like, and then that same night that we first played it with Matey, our manager came in and sat in the room with us, and we had gone through a whole practice. We had played it at the beginning practice, and it was great. It was good. And then we're like, yeah, okay. And then we played a whole 2-hour rehearsal, and then we played it again as the last song, and it was just explosively like she was like, gobsmacked, like, oh my God, you guys wrote that? Like that's incredible. Like that's the one. Like that, you gotta record that. And then so I was like, let's record this with Ken,
Yeah.
And we recorded it, and it was just like, it's everything that we've ever wanted to do with like a pop song, but also alternative. It's got flavors of Cage the Elephant, which we love in it. We all love.
Right.
And
well, yeah, this is kind of an
Pixies,
interesting,
and just, we played a lot of shows since then too. We've probably played definitely 30 plus shows or something, maybe.
Sure.
And we've dealt with venues being sexist and editing, photoshopping blush onto Matey's face for a picture. The whole day and the whole night, the guy came and was like telling Matey to smile and yelled at me for where my pedal board was, and it was the weirdest thing of our lives. And Matey was talking to Scott about it, and Scott's like, "What are we going to do about this?" And that is the sign of a good label.
Yeah.
Being like, are we going to blacklist them? Are we going to tell everyone what is going on? Or,
Yeah.
So, very protective. just very.
We exist in this time now where we don't have to put up with that shit anymore.
No, we don't. Absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I mean, we're a feminist band too. I mean, and that's another thing that people I don't think necessarily vibe with us with.
Yeah.
You know, we really believe in that.
Well, I wanted to actually ask about that a little bit because, like, you know, you guys are pretty straightforward about who you are, you know, what you're about. You're not like hiding behind an agenda or anything like that.
No.
And in this
just world domination.
Exactly. Well, and in this current climate, unfortunately, we are existing in this world where, like, at the edges, sexism and racism is starting to creep into things and try to make a place for itself again in our culture. Do you guys feel more strongly about we have to double down on these things now to show that, like, oh, hey, we can't tolerate any of this? Or do you have a different strategy, or how has that changed?
I absolutely feel that we should double down on it as well. There's a line in the song "Shake Me" that says, "I'll get away with the suit and the tie on, and I'll get away with a simple denial." And that's Mady asked me, "Is this political? Is this a political Colourflies track?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe." You know, like just kind of like I'm not saying no. You know.
Well, there's little bits here and there throughout everything.
There are. The Rugrat on the last record was really political, very, very, very consumer life, machine driven. There are little bits of that in my writing, I feel, but I also definitely absolutely believe that there's a no tolerance policy for racism in any kind of thing that I want to be a part of, you know.
Absolutely.
Or sexism, you know, and we've unfortunately encountered it, you know. I mean, and I don't know if this is racist. Well, I'm not. People think I'm black. I'm not black. I'm Pacific Islander and Native American and Hawaiian and Japanese and stuff.
And I bet the assumption is very offensive.
Right. Well, I mean, a little bit. I mean, I understand where people are coming from, sort of, but my whole life I've gotten that. But the thing is, the thing that shocks me is I've also never been, in a music sense and a community-wise and press and stuff like that wise, and it's never been, because, okay, say, and this is kind of a weird inverse proposition here, but so, like, just stay with me on it.
Sure.
If you were to assume I was black, I have had absolutely no kind of, like, there's no article that's ever come out being like, a black musician is playing rock and roll. God save our souls. That is amazing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like nothing like that ever. No different. No kind of like anything. You know, on my race or
that hasn't
or that
been the
it's
lead.
Diverse or that is diverse, that we're doing something and I'm not white and you know what I mean? It's like, and it's just, that seems so strange to me in our culture.
Given some of the stories I've heard, I'm actually kind of shocked.
Yeah, isn't that strange that nobody's ever approached me from that position?
Yeah, but you know, in a way, I guess that's a good. I mean,
but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm wondering isn't that how it's supposed to be?
Exactly. Yeah,
but like,
the few examples that you get.
That's what I'm saying. In my heart of hearts, I believe that's how it's supposed to be. But I feel like people not doing that, like, it almost seems like it's because it's a racial thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's the weirdest, like, it's just so weird. It's so, like, I feel honestly, and that's what I'm saying, is like, I honestly believe it's supposed to be that way. You shouldn't be celebrated necessarily for that because of your race. But at the same time, I feel like it's almost like a racial thing that nobody's ever done it. You know, assuming that I am what they think I am.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if that is a little bit of the silence that Spokane has, just in terms of historically speaking. I'm sure that you are aware of this, but Spokane has not been the most racially sensitive place.
No, yeah, absolutely not.
And so, I mean, I'm not pointing any fingers or saying I know for sure, but there could be still part of that silence going on where they're like, oh, we don't know how to talk about people at all
No, yeah, and I agree that there's a static there that is not that it has not been, properly dealt with or even understood or could be,
Sure.
necessarily.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it this way, I'm one of the only non-white guitar players playing, sold out shows and
you have a deal
opening for national acts.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm coming from with it now?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so weird to me that it's like
some part of that does feel like maybe race is playing a role, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just seems almost like, well, that's kind of weird,
Yeah, very much so. Well, and to put it in terms of another thing, if
because like that's what I'm saying is like the top bands in our town are led by white macho men with beards,
yes,
who don't wear dresses on stage. You kind of like you put the pieces together and you're like, this is kind of weird.
And that's what I was thinking is that like there's probably several things that are working here because like they see the race dimension, but they also see like, oh, there's gender bending elements here, and they're playing this kind of weird music, and I'm uncomfortable.
Oh, they have a girl playing bass.
Yeah,
it's like, and that's what I'm saying. It's time to move forward. It's time to progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not talking about progression on Facebook where you pretend to progress. I'm talking about actual progression.
Right. Yeah, because like we can talk all we want online about everything, but like it's out in the world, at shows, at events.
Right. I believe in people that actually do something. I believe in people that actually try to do something. You can talk about something all you want, but I mean, the idea to try to manifest something and actually manifesting something are completely different things.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not necessarily angry, but I'm always like kind of on the on the outskirts of things, it seems,
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that unfortunately this is something that has happened often in your life, not just in music.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, people assumed I was good at sports. People assumed I was good at rapping.
Right.
I am good at rapping. That's not the issue.
They say that you say you want to do music, and they automatically assume like, okay, well, what R. Kelly songs are you influenced by?
No, I have the greatest. I have the antidote. I have the greatest story to that. One time, my stepmom's grandfather, my stepmother was like, Matthew is in a band, and he was like, oh, a hip hop group.
That's yeah. Oh,
but
man.
I mean, and I'm not making excuses. It's just he couldn't understand. He couldn't possibly understand
that it
which
would
is
be
just a crazy,
something else.
Which is a crazy like approximation of not seeing things in your life, because even in his time, there were black musicians, and white people stole a lot from black musicians.
Yeah,
so.
Who played guitar very well.
I know, it's so crazy to me. It's so weird. It's a weird world,
Yeah.
WTBC.
Let's move on to something else, actually, then, because we've talked quite a bit about this stuff. So I kind of wanted to move to like what we can expect from the Colourflies soon, and I thought a good way to approach this might be to help get me on board. We were actually exchanging kind of on the internet, Matt and I, this little conversation about Prince, and I was admitting that I don't know anything about Prince. I know he's a good guitar player, and that's basically it. I know he was popular. And so I feel like maybe a good thing to get from the Colourflies might be some recommendations of things that, you know, when the album comes out, what should I be primed with? What should I be listening to kind of get me in the mood so that when I put this record on, I'm ready?
Number one, Prince.
Okay, go back to the drawing board with the Prince.
Funny enough, the first single is going to be a double single, and probably one of the first things we'll hear from us is essentially a Prince riff.
Very cool.
A little bit of Placebo and Jane's Addiction, and
okay.
Very about that. But so Prince, love Prince more than most things.
Nice.
I would listen to a lot of Kenny Loggins.
Oh, okay.
I'd listen to a lot of
specifically Return to Pooh Corner.
Return to Pooh Corner specifically. I would listen to a lot of My Bloody Valentine.
That goes without saying.
A lot of Imperial Teen.
Man, I haven't thought of those guys in a while.
Yeah.
You know what?
So Will Schwartz.
Posies vibes too.
Yeah, Posies, of course, absolutely.
Posies.
I would listen. Will Schwartz is actually from Imperial Teen. Is going to do a duet with me on a song on the record.
Very cool. Very cool.
But it's like an all-star album for us, at least, anyway.
Right on.
But as going on, I would listen to a lot of Oceania Pumpkins.
Cool.
I would listen to a lot of Depeche Mode.
Okay.
A lot of pop music, like early 2000 pop music. I would listen to a lot of that.
Got
a lot
it.
of Charlie Bliss.
Okay.
Particularly their first album, Guppy.
Oh yeah, their first album was cool. Yeah,
It was amazing. I would listen to Saucy Yoda.
Now we're getting into the deep cuts.
That's pretty deep.
Oh man.
I would listen. Wait, Devin, throw some out.
What? I don't know.
A lot of Hum.
Oh yeah, you'd prefer an astronaut.
Yeah, amazing record. That was real.
Kind of underrated too, because like they really kind of dropped off the map right away, and I think that even the follow up to that one was great.
Yeah, really good.
You know what? Also, the Doors album, The End.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Doors.
Good.
I was listening to a lot of Tommy James and the Shondells. I've been listening to that like religiously.
That's good.
I would love to write a song like John Mayer, absolutely.
Fair enough.
I would love to write a song like Crystal Blue Persuasion or something like that one day.
Oh, right. Okay.
And people don't know that Tommy James and the Shondells are like the powerhouse of hits.
Yeah, there was a lot of good songs in that group.
I Think We're Alone Now.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of insane.
Oh, yeah.
I would listen to a lot of.
I think just for your own health, there's that Sweet album with Ballroom Blitz on it.
Yeah, but yeah. Love It. Love Is Oxygen, which is on that album. Which is I would. But Sweet by Sweet.
Sweet's a good one too, because it's like this weird kind of like almost proto power pop, where it's like they were a little bit earlier than everybody else, but they had the same vibe.
And the reaching, I mean, like you get like bands like Cheap Trick out of that, which I would listen to a lot of.
Yeah.
Because very much what we do.
You've been getting into Ween lately.
Ween as well. Yeah, we got into Ween during this record.
Right on. Well, so here's a good follow-up question to that too. Like now we're kind of primed for stuff to expect. What are your favorite kind of dark horse tracks on this coming album? Stuff that maybe isn't going to be a single, but are kind of pet songs for each of you that you love.
Yeah. We all have kind of different ones.
I think Keisha is probably my favorite. Either Keisha or Crank. That's kind of a tough call. Crank's a good one. Crank is it was a 12-minute song for the end of the record. Ow. I mean, goddamn. I don't know. It's, I'm on the side of I really like Bomb Pop. It's very pretty. I really like it.
Nice.
It's very a sound we've been wanting to achieve for a long time. The balance of a sound. I love little things. There's an acoustic-y thing called Fuzzy that might go on there that I like a lot. Another acoustic-y thing called just Porcelain, which I also like. As far as the band tracks, Horseradish is one of my pet favorites, definitely. 1997 I like a lot.
Good year.
I don't know if I have like I don't know, like it's hard to even think of all the songs.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was mostly the ones where I liked my drum track the most, but also I just liked the songs too.
Right.
So,
there are those kind of moments where you remember like, oh, that was a solid performance. Listen to that.
Yeah, definitely. A new one that we have that we're going to record for the end of the record. I mean, not the end, but it's like the last track that we're close to being recording. Jelly Beanie. That's a song that I think that we all. I mean, that'll probably be every show, just because of the arrangement and the excitement behind the song.
Nice.
But something
UPC said it has to be exciting.
Exactly. Something that I like. Is a song called Ache. And that'll probably be one of my favorites. Honestly, it's almost like Renaissance music.
Everyone I showed really liked it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Nice.
It's Renaissance meets Thin Lizzy.
I think that's what the world needs. Actually, that's very good.
It's true. That's a band I would also listen to a lot of. Sorry, if you want to listen when you start to listen to it, right? And Live in Color.
Oh yes, a band that I think is finally getting more respect than they used to.
Oh God, yeah. So good. So yes, stuff like that. A lot of 70s, a lot of 80s new wave, little 60s love, that one band that Alex Chilton was in before Big Star.
Oh yeah, with the Box Tops. The
the Box Tops.
Yeah. That's good. That's good stuff too. You know, they. Oh man, those songs are solid. And that's going to do it for us this week here on the program. My conversation with Matthew Leggard and Devin Coshney of the Colourflies. And you can find a lot more about them by visiting the links and whatnot in the show notes for this one. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation and you want to check out some of the older ones. We had a little bit of a virus problem for the last couple of months, and that's really put the show on hold. And, well, I'm not going to apologize for that, because whatever. Life goes on. But I think we're getting back into the swing of things, and I would like to include more of this kind of content on the show occasionally, and so we're going to continue to alternate when we have a new WTBC show. You'll be able to hear it. And the rest of the time, it'll be Mid-Valley Mutations or some variant thereof. You'll get the hang of it as time goes on, and yeah, it's fine. Don't worry. Just keep on keeping on the way you do, and we'll keep on keeping on the way we do. This would be the point in the program where I would launch into some sort of weird, long, hackneyed, and probably difficult to follow thing about the virus and how it's affecting our lives, and there's never been a better time and all that jazz. But what I think I will say instead is that we're finding new ways to be creative in this time and in this world that we live in. And I hope that for those of you who are out there doing cool things and creative and fun and weird, interesting things, well, maybe this show will be a place for you someday. And yeah, let's get in touch. Let's find out what you do, and we'll go from there. I could probably yak on and on, so let me just say you guys are wonderful, you guys are beautiful, and without you there would be no program. Be seeing you. But that is something that we kind of hinted at before, because like this idea that you were talking about is like you liked the idea that you guys were like a pop version of Mudhoney, and you wanted to see how big that could get, where you were like,
yeah,
how can
absolutely.
How can I turn this into something that's like more intellectual but also still rocks?
Right, and that's the I mean, Devin and I basically decided, you know what, rock is corny, you know, rock is this and that, but once we were rocking 600, 700 people out of their minds, we're like, you know what, it doesn't matter anymore.
Let's have fun.
Let's just do it, you know, and do it to the most extreme possible level that we can do it, you know. like as heavy as we can get it, and as kinetic as we can get it. Polyrhythms and you know what I mean, like Rush, almost Rush levels of prog, and that's what this record is. It's a heavy pop. It's like a heavy prog pop album.
Now this is something that I mean, maybe it's accentuated now that wasn't quite there before, but this kind of back and forth between kind of like a sloppy, trashy name and then kind of a deep, insightful name.
Yeah, that's a thing, or an in joke or inside joke as a name.
Yeah.
There's definitely that with that, and with that's a salvo that we have as our dichotomy as a band. I feel like too is the beautiful with the ugly.
WTBC, anywhere, from our house to yours.